And so, my name is Linda Lilienfeld, and I'm the creator and founder of this event called Let's Talk About Water. And just to tell you a little bit about myself, I have a house here in Sag Harbor. I've been coming out since '79. And I love it here very much. I actually rent my house. And interestingly enough, when I thought of doing this project, I discovered the woman who's renting my house is a publicist and a public relations person named Kathleen Mulcahy, and I could not have done this project without her. She's absolutely brilliant. And so as a film and picture researcher, what that means is I look for images that go into films. So when you see historic footage in a film or old photos in a book, they're in archives and libraries, and I go and find them. And I did it for 40 years. I still do it, actually. And I worked on an exhibition about climate change. And it was in 1992 at the American Museum of Natural History. And it was a book written by Andrew Refkin, and it was an exhibition that was completely confusing. People thought it was about ozone depletion. By the way, I want to welcome all of you here because it's such a beautiful day, and it's very nice of you to come and join us. And so I tried to do a $6 million project about climate change because I was so upset by it. And I thought, how do we describe this subject? It seems water is the best entry point because water knits it all together. And I thought that watersheds was actually a very good way to have a boundary that gives you a sense of place and a personal relationship to the land around you and a personal commitment to maybe trying to do something to improve the situation. And so I created this very large project which did not get funded by NSF, but in fact I created a friendship with a group of hydrologists. Hydrologists are water scientists, and we created Let's Talk About Water Together, where we use film as a way to bring people all together on the same page. We take the program to universities all over the United States, and I also do the project in Delft, Holland for 6 years. And the point of it is that the science about climate change and water is very esoteric and in a language that's very hard to understand and access. And so the whole idea is to make it more accessible, to bring the people who would be on the stage. We're all equal, and for you to feel comfortable to ask simple, what you might think is as stupid questions or dumb questions. There are no dumb questions. And so since I've done this project all these years and I came out here, I have checked my house and to be out here, and I thought, why don't I do a show out here? I was reading a lot about the water in Georgia Pond and the stories out here and about Chris Gobler and the work at Stony Brook. And I thought, you know, I'm gonna do a show out here. And then Kathleen offered to help me. Well, we decided to work together. And so here we are. So the way the day will go is we are showing a movie about Mexico. So why Mexico? Because this is one of my favorite films. It's an incredibly cinematic movie. It talks about science in a way that's very accessible, and there are similarities and there are differences. So as you watch the film, I'd like you to make note of where the similarities are, where the differences are, what we can learn from the film that might help us here on the East End. And then at the end, we will have an absolutely marvelous panel. And I don't know if you got little handouts. There's a little yellow booklet. Everyone get it? Oh, that's great. So it tells you about each of the panelists, and then we are actually videotaping the panel after the show. We had a program this morning for young people, and so we started with the movie WALL-E in this beautiful theater, and we had refreshments, and then we had two speakers, Paul Baldessano and Corinne Olson, and as I introduced them, I used a quote of Chris Gobler, which is, and because of this watershed idea, I've actually been invited out of a meeting when I had a meeting with the National Association of Counties. People who work in county thinking don't like to think about watersheds because they're actually not quite coherent together. But in terms of nature, nature likes thinking about the environment in terms of watersheds. So we'll watch the movie and then we'll have the panel. And You can ask questions, and we will make it very relaxed and fun. I lost my train of thought. I was saying something about something, but now I forgot it, so you're off the hook. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. We're going to lower the lights. We're going to show the movie. Enjoy the show. Thank you all for coming, and I will remember my thought and then burst in during the movie. So thank you very much. I'll take it away. Thank you. Oh, I know. Stop. Hey, stop. I want to thank Kathleen Mulcahy. I want to thank the talented people of Guildhall to make this one of the best theaters I've ever worked in, and the technical crew and family, and all the other people that have helped us. And I also want to thank the Johnson Family Foundation, who support this project for many, many years, and also the Consortium of Universities for the Advancement of Hydrologic Science, Inc. See you later, guys. Take care. Bye. Thank you. Thank you very much.
La Ciudad de México sí fue fundada en el agua.
Hubo dos concepciones de lo que la Cuenca de México podía ser. Una era una ciudad lacustre, que era la concepción prehispánica, y luego cuando llegan los españoles con una concepción de ciudades secas. Y pues gana finalmente la de ciudad seca.
Como una cultura que nació en el agua, que se desarrolló en el agua, puede vivir sin agua.
El error de tener una población tan grande, 22 millones de personas dentro de la cuenca del Valle de México a 2.200 metros sobre el nivel del mar, es una decisión que nosotros estamos viviendo. Cambiar una decisión de 500 años en la historia, bueno, no parece que sea una cosa sencilla.
Aquí hay mucha demanda de agua. Se van haciendo colonias nuevas, entonces es a donde nos mandan a dejar el agua. Sí, sí, eso es todos los días. La gente no paga el agua, simple y sencillamente nada más paga el arrastre del agua para que llegue a su destino, porque el agua en sí es gratuita. Buenos días. ¿Dónde se vacía, jefa? ¿La cisterna está para allá adentro? Sí, con esa, por favor. ¿Ya llegó ahí, madre? Ya. Este es su croquis. Listo.
Pues yo ocupo una pipa por mes, porque vivo con mi nuera y somos 4 de familia.
Hubo un corte de 4 días. Yo llevo trabajando en la Condesa más o menos 7 años y 4 días sin agua nunca había pasado. Y esto es un caos porque no solo los restaurantes tenemos problemas, digo, todas las colonias, toda la colonia Condesa tiene problemas.
En Iztapalapa, en la zona de Zapotitlán, ahí en la noche nos secuestraron a 2 compañeros y a mí junto con otro compañero. A los otros 2 compañeros sí los secuestraron hasta las 3:30 de la madrugada, los soldados. Pero sí nos amenazaban con que si no les llevamos el agua, pues nos iban a hacer algo.
Andamos, pues, como dice el dicho, peleando que tengamos una base de tener el agua, que pues, nos falta, ¿no? Ve a ver si ya sigue bajando y me vienes a avisar. Prácticamente ya llevamos un promedio de 30 a 35 años, o sea, sufriendo este tipo de movimiento. Pero ese tiempo que me llevo yo en bajar el agua es 1 hora. 1 hora para bajar los tambos.
Además de la importancia política que significa ser la capital de la República, económicamente representa casi 1/4 parte, ¿no?, de la economía del país. Es decir, para que el país siga adelante, necesitamos mantener el nivel de producción de la zona metropolitana. La ciudad es un sistema, ¿no?, de servicios integrados, en donde el agua es uno de los elementos, pero es un elemento clave. Y ese elemento clave no lo hemos podido resolver totalmente hasta la fecha.
Desde hace ya más de 20 años nos quedamos sin agua en la Ciudad de México y estamos importando agua de otras cuencas, de otras regiones del país, en específico el sistema Cutzamala.
El sistema Cutzamala nace en la parte alta de Ciudad Hidalgo, en Michoacán. De ahí baja hacia Tuxpan, también en Michoacán. De ahí se deriva el agua hasta la presa del Bosque. conjunta en la planta de Los Berros con agua que proviene de otra presa que es Villa Victoria, también en el Estado de México. Ahí se potabiliza y de ahí viene por las líneas del acueducto hasta el Valle de México.
Como gallos sin navaja, me dieron el corazón. Culpa no puede, culpa no. Pues México la necesita, como la necesitamos aquí, pero pues que pues tampoco no se la lleven toda, o sea que nos dejen la que necesitamos aquí, ¿no? O sea que no nos dejaran sin agua, sino que pues o sea, o sea, vieran lo que también necesita uno.
El sistema Cutzamala, cuando se puso en operación, era fundamentalmente para no desgastar tanto el acuífero. Ya no es una nueva fuente que es indispensable. Y se pierde una gran cantidad de agua en lo que son el Distrito Federal y los municipios conurbados, en la zona metropolitana. Se habla de que se pierde hasta el 40% del total del agua que se consume. Quiere decir que prácticamente el agua que llega de Cutzamala se va en fugas en el Valle de México.
¿Ya? No, pues ahorita dígame, si se la pago, pues me la llevo. Como usted vea. Porque sí la saco.
Porque si no se vaya a morir.
¿Sí? ¿Cuánto quieres por él?
Pues me costó 90 pesos.
Sí, la lastimo.
Sí. Se voy a morir mejor. Es mejor llévese.
Ay, este perro. Bueno, se va a tomar a la otra. Corre así. Ahí quédate un rato. Hago 3 viajes cuando voy con el burro en la mañana. De 3 viajes son... ¿Cuántos? Son 6 garrafones. 40, 60, 120 litros de agua. Desde que llegamos, acarreamos el agua.
Los asentamientos de más viviendas irregulares que no han recibido infraestructura, pues el ir a llevarle un tubo para darle agua potable seguramente no va a ocurrir nunca.
¿Listo?
A ver qué más podemos lograr. Pues ya tenemos un techo de tubo, ¿no?
Seguro que les va a encantar a todos.
Me emociona mucho que estén todos aquí realmente. Llevamos 2 años trabajando esto de la captación de agua de lluvia y cuando empezamos era nada, éramos nada más con las vecinas de al lado y ahorita ver cómo está agarrando como vuelo esto de la captación de lluvia realmente me es muy emocionante y muchísimas gracias a todos ustedes por estar acá. Vamos a poner un sistema de captación hoy sobre este edificio acá, dirigido ahorita a las cisternas que ya existen, aunque ahora que vemos que van a haber más cisternas, vemos cómo lo conectamos ahí también. Traemos todo el material, los tubos, los filtros. Nos va a tardar todo el día, pero somos un equipo aquí, los que quieran entrarle. Pues vamos a empezar, ¿no? Es día de trabajo hoy, ya está. Pero lo que vamos a hacer es sacarle unos disparos de agua a este hilado de ladrillos, conectarlos a los tubos, de los dos lados van a correr, se van a ir para la esquina de atrás y van a bajar al separador de aguas. Hay que organizarnos un poco por eso, pero lo primero que tenemos que hacer es bajar todo el material que está en la camioneta y lo vamos poniendo aquí para que todo esté a la mano, ¿va? Vamos. Se llaman separadores de primeras aguas y son el componente más importante de un sistema de captación de lluvia realmente. Lo que hacen es que cuando empieza un aguacero, los primeros minutos van a ir arrastrando toda la tierra que está en el techo. Aquí adentro hay una pelota. Entonces va entrando el agua y se va llenando con esa agua más sucia. Y cuando ya se llena el tambo, esa pelota va a flotar y va a trancar esta entrada. Entonces los primeros 200 litros, digamos, que caen, nada más van a llenar esto y ya cuando esto tapa, ya lo que sigue ya es lo que va a la cisterna. Entonces en esos primeros 200 litros se va a quedar casi toda la tierrita y contaminación, casi todo se va a quedar, ¿no? Y ya con eso vamos a tener un agua muy limpia, muy cristalina. Y luego ya la vamos a filtrar en camino a los tinacos. Chicles y bombas, ¿cómo nos dividimos? Sí, sí, sí. 39, correcto. Entonces esa es la pendiente que le vamos a dar. Le vamos a dar como así un segundito el martillo y el cincel, carnal. Le pones la Y, subes y ahí pones la salida. Ahí queda bien, pero vente la T al ojito. No sé, o sea.
¿Es el grande? Sí, es la de la Virgen de Guadalupe.
Y cuando llueve, es que llueve todo el día y noche, ¿eh?
No, pues está de película. Aquí al año ha de llover que unos 1,400 milímetros.
Andamos por los 1,500.
1,500, no manches, 500, está increíble. Eso significa 1,500 litros de agua al año por cada metro cuadrado. Y aquí tenemos 200, ¿cuántos metros cuadrados tenemos aquí? 211.
Una manera que puedes como verlo, 20 milímetros en un metro cuadrado llena un garrafón. Si ahora lo piensas, llenando tu techo con un garrafón cada metro cuadrado, muchísimo, muchísimo.
Son 284.850 litros al año más o menos lo que se debe de captar.
El tema de la recolección de agua de lluvia no va a resolver el problema, pero lo mitiga. Entonces, cualquier acción al respecto que vaya ligada a este tema de la cultura del agua sería importantísimo, ¿no? No puede ser una estrategia única, ¿no? Es decir, si necesito agua, la traigo de los ríos más cercanos, ¿no? Que eso es lo que prácticamente hemos hecho en el pasado.
Medio millar de personas fueron desalojadas de sus domicilios a consecuencia de las afectaciones que sufrieron por las intensas lluvias. Ante esta situación de emergencia, el gobernador del estado...
que todas las aguas
que corrieron por ahí son aguas negras, de ahí la
El sistema de aguas
importancia
de la de
de
Ciudad de
vacunarse
México,
contra
Ramón Aguirre,
hepatitis.
informó que más de 1.450 viviendas fueron afectadas por las fuertes lluvias del domingo que superaron la capacidad del sistema de drenaje profundo. También advirtió que a pesar de las fuertes lluvias en el Valle de México, estas no serán suficientes para superar el déficit de las presas del sistema Cuchamala.
Yo no, digo que no puedo por el dedo. Eso ya no sirve. Año con año es la misma situación. Se nos llega a meter el agua hasta más de 1 metro, metro y 10. Entonces, lo que son muebles, camas, todo lo perdemos automáticamente. Si ustedes ven hacia adentro,
de la casa.
todo lo perdemos.
O sea, un colchón de los que compra uno sale 6,000 pesos. El refrigerador tan solo se volteó.
Es clínica médica y consultorio dental también. Tenemos pacientes hospitalizados, no pudieron salir tampoco, nuestros medicamentos se echaron a perder también.
Doctora,
Bueno, le traía a mi niño, ¿quieren ajustar? Pues todo ya de fuera, ya tiramos colchones, tiramos sillones, ya limpiando.
A las 7 de la mañana.
A las 7 ya estaba ya sin agua, ¿verdad?
Sin agua, pero estaba lleno de lodo, agua sucia, más que nada de drenaje.
Sí, ahorita, pues esperemos que no llueva más, porque ya nos dio miedo.
Ay, sí, pedimos a Dios que no llueva.
Hay niños con problemas recurrentes de salud por este tipo de inundaciones, enfermedades respiratorias, pues todas las infectocontagiosas, enfermedades infectocontagiosas. Representa un problema de salud bastante grande para la comunidad de aquí, para nosotros mismos como médicos, como pacientes, como seres humanos. Puras aguas negras.
El Valle de México, estrictamente hablando, es una cuenca endorreica. Esto quiere decir que es un lugar rodeado de montañas a los que el agua llega por lluvia y no tiene una manera de salir mediante el flujo de un río que se fuese hasta finalmente los océanos. En una cuenca endorreica el agua se concentra en el fondo y solamente sale por evaporación.
El origen de la problemática pues es ese, que la ciudad está en lo que era un lago y donde el agua normalmente tiende a ir. Y esto se ha agravado en los últimos 60 años por los hundimientos del suelo de la ciudad. Hundimientos provocados por la extracción excesiva de agua del subsuelo. El centro de la ciudad estaba por encima del nivel del lago de Texcoco y esto se ha hundido en números redondos 10 metros.
Aquí tienen el acuífero superior. De aquí se saca el agua, de la Ciudad de México. Ese es el mapa geológico que hicimos. La zona de Iztapalapa se acerca mucho al centro de la cuenca, donde en el primer acuífero hay aguas salobres. Por eso los pozos que nosotros perforamos aquí de poca profundidad producen agua de mala calidad. Entonces no podemos surtir de agua a Iztapalapa con pozos normales. Sabemos que hay 3 capas debajo de la superficie del Valle de México. Va hasta unos 600 metros de profundidad. Y de ahí abajo hay vulcanitas hasta los 1500 metros que representan lo que le pusimos el segundo acuífero, del cual creemos que no es abundante. Pero el tercer acuífero, que son las calizas debajo de las vulcanitas del terciario medio y terciario inferior, estas son las calizas en las que creemos y esperamos encontrar agua posiblemente para explotación. Hay que considerar que esto es un pozo de exploración. No sabemos qué clase de agua encontraremos a profundidad, si el agua es buena, mediana o mala de calidad. Estamos explorando, estamos avanzando, puede uno decirlo así, en lo incógnito.
En el Valle de México, mientras no trabajemos y logremos la sustentabilidad, está destinado a la crisis total, no más allá del 2025. Todos los estudios manejan y nos hacen ver que ya no va a haber agua suficiente del acuífero subterráneo. Eso ha hecho que el sistema Cutzamala se vuelva fundamental, que es indispensable. Cuando baja una aportación pequeña del sistema Cutzamala, genera prácticamente problemas en toda la ciudad. No hay planes ni hay fuentes, o sea, tenemos únicamente el sistema Cutzamala y los pozos. Si fallan los pozos, por el motivo que fueras, no hay más, no hay dónde llevar. Si falla Cutzamala, no hay otra fuente.
yo estimaría que aproximadamente en los próximos 6 a 10 años hay necesidad de invertir del orden de 4 a 8 mil millones de dólares en la zona metropolitana, exclusivamente para el tema de agua. Y con ello no resolveríamos el 100% de la problemática, pero sí daríamos un avance muy importante. Pero esa cifra, pues es una cifra que representa un esfuerzo muy grande, tanto del gobierno federal como de los gobiernos estatales que están involucrados en la zona metropolitana.
Arreglar los tubos es mucho más eficiente que traer agua de otros sitios, agua que ya sería costosa de todos modos, y meterla en las redes deterioradas estas, para que la mayor parte se fugue además.
Buenas tardes, ¿atiende lluvia? ¿Qué desea reportar?
Sí, mire, lo que pasa es que toda la tarde ha estado lloviendo y ahora sí, ya...
La inundación ahorita está en la calle de...
Una inundación, un intercambio.
Tenemos 4 días sin agua aquí en la calle de Pisco.
¿Y la falta de agua es solo en su casa habitación o en toda la calle?
No, en varias cuadras, varias.
¿Cuál es su dirección
de usted? Es calle Tecax.
Más o menos como cuánto tiempo tardarán para proporcionarnos el servicio.
¿En qué delegación?
No sea malita, que lo vayan a ver porque ya lleva 3 días.
Y ahora sí, ya rebasó la banqueta.
Tormenta 15 para A10.
Me encuentro en Paseo de la Reforma, esquina con Ferrocarril de Cuernavaca, la colonia Lomas de Chapultepec, confirmando que se trata de un brote de aguas negras. Al momento se está conduciendo a una rejilla de drenaje, pero es necesario un Bactor para desalojar el pozo de visita que se encuentra sobre banqueta. A ver si enterado.
Agua, ¿sí?
Esta es grasa que sale de los puestos, de tacos, de las tortas, todo esto se nos va haciendo grasa, se nos acumula en la red y es a lo que nosotros sacamos. Son bolas de los puestos, porque no es otra cosa, pura grasa. Lo que pasa es que nos hace falta un poquito de cultura para no tirar la basura en la calle, que tengan conciencia y toda esa grasa las pueden echar en bolsas o en botes y no echarlas al drenaje, que es lo que nos perjudica. La gente tira toda clase de basura, botellas, perros, echan perros, llantas, ya se ha encontrado de todo. Vamos a ir a la zona de tiro para poder tirar todos los sólidos y líquidos que se cargan en las zonas de trabajo. El procedimiento es bien sencillo. aproximadamente hace como unos 10 años venimos aquí a este tiradero. Venimos más o menos dos veces por semana.
Los escurrimientos que ocurren de los depósitos de basura. Y esa agua, aunque no es muy abundante, es sumamente contaminada. Cuando esto se deja escurrir y se infiltra a los acuíferos, pues los contaminan muy seriamente.
El agua que se produce en la planta de tratamiento Cerro de la Estrella se emplea en las zonas de cultivo básicamente de la delegación Tláhuac, que abarcan una superficie aproximada de 4.000 hectáreas. El agua tratada es susceptible de ser potabilizada. De hecho, en esta instalación, en esta planta, se está llevando a cabo un plan piloto para potabilizar agua que a la postre será infiltrada a subsuelo.
Este proyecto se creó como una necesidad para subsanar lo que es la sobreexplotación del manto acuífero. El agua ya potabilizada pasa a un estanque donde existen unos biosensores que son truchas. Estas truchas requieren una calidad de manantial. Entonces, en cuanto la calidad del agua empieza a disminuir, empiezan a haber alteraciones fisiológicas en las truchas. Entonces nosotros ahí checamos, bueno, si algo está sucediendo dentro de la calidad del agua que se está produciendo. La utilización del agua residual potabilizada puede ser una solución a los problemas del desabasto de agua. Estoy segura que es parte de la solución. El objetivo es potabilizar el agua y reinyectarla al acuífero.
Si usted quiere infiltrar agua normal, al poco tiempo el pozo se colmatea. Se forman bacterias y el agua ya no se infiltra. A los pocos meses la infiltración va fallando. Para que se infiltre el agua continuamente, tendría uno que llevarla al estado de electropura. Y si limpiamos el agua al estado de electropura, ¿para qué? Para que se pueda infiltrar continuamente, entonces mejor la distribuimos en vez de infiltrarla.
En este valle verduzco, antes corrían ríos rutilantes, cenizos, castaños y cárdenos. Hoy van mugiendo, entubados, menguados, pesados de aguas negras, crecidos de mierda, avanzando a tumbos por la ciudad desflorada, desembocando en los lagos letales y en el marcado mar que ya no los ama.
El 88% de todas las aguas de este país están contaminadas. Esto se debe a los productos que estamos consumiendo cada uno de nosotros y también a las descargas de las grandes empresas. Arrojan contaminantes que, aunque están prohibidos, no tenemos la suficiente capacidad institucional para estar vigilando a todas estas empresas.
Es una peste tremenda, porque desgraciadamente hasta ni el agua de aquí de las tuberías que supuestamente es potable, huele a puro canal, puro registro. Creo que todavía el canal huele mejor que todavía el agua que supuestamente es potable y sale, porque ni los trastes se pueden lavar, porque tomas en un vasito y te huele a puro drenaje.
Pues sí, hay veces que también por eso no se vende mucho, pero siempre trato de echar así clarasol o algo para que se vayan al mosco. Sí, nos comentaron que había una señora ahí en el canal tirada.
Este río es un panteón. Aquí han venido a tirar personas que las traen de otro lado. Si ojalá y tuvieran consideración, porque en el 58 dijeron que iban a entubar,
Perfecto.
pero nunca hicieron nada.
Y ahorita.
Por favor. Es algo muy contradictorio porque como servicio de salud, encontrarnos cerca de una fuente de contaminación, es simplemente el hecho de estar continuamente oliendo lo que vaporiza el canal, pues desde ese momento ya nosotros estamos contaminados.
Debería de afectar si lo pensamos por sentido de común. Sin embargo, por las estadísticas donde se presentan la demanda de atención de la población, difícilmente tengo un incremento en cuestiones de enfermedades diarreicas, enfermedades de la piel o enfermedades de los ojos, ¿verdad? O neumonías o vías respiratorias.
También sería conveniente que sí pasara también al médico. Ahorita que abre su boca, están inflamadas las amígdalas.
Posiblemente las personas pudieran quedarse en su casa, hacer alguna actividad de tipo familiar y a veces no me llega toda la problemática aquí.
afectación con el agua es de que sale muy sucia, apestosa, con gusanos. Pues si no sale con gusanos, no sale como unas tipo viboritas, como unos lunarcitos rojos, pero son gusanitos, son bichos. Ahí está. Sí, sobrevivimos, porque no es de vivir, sobrevivimos. No nos han dado nada de justicia.
Tenemos que tener un claro sentido de la realidad en donde tenemos un problema de desigualdad muy importante y lo tenemos dentro de la zona metropolitana. La expectativa de que queremos una ciudad limpia, moderna, activa, segura, pero si eso no lo vemos junto con la necesidad de elevar el nivel educativo de todos y de disminuir la desigualdad, ¿no? Tenemos una situación muy difícil de balancear.
El sistema de drenaje es en todo el Valle de México, que es un sistema combinado, que saca el agua que utiliza la gente y el agua de la lluvia, que hay que desalojarla para que no se inunde.
Considerando el agua de lluvia y las aguas residuales, nos da un promedio de 40 metros cúbicos por segundo. Quizá ayuda a pensar que un metro cúbico es más o menos un tinaco de 1000 litros. Entonces, si usted se imagina 40 tinacos formados y que cada segundo, cuando decimos 1, 2, 3, cada vez que decimos un número, los 40 tinacos se volcaran y soltaran toda esa cantidad de agua. Ese es el reto. Como las aguas residuales y las aguas de lluvia no se separan en la ciudad y se tienen que tratar, para tratar 40 metros cúbicos por segundo hemos concebido un sistema de 5 plantas de tratamiento, de las cuales la más grande es esta.
Es el agua que ya no podemos derivar, el agua negra hacia los canales, la que viene de la salida del drenaje profundo. Esa espuma vuela, cae en estos lugares aledaños al canal, y ya cuando se desaparece la espuma, queda ese cochambre ahí pegado.
Y hay temporadas cuando se llenan los canales, se levantan volcanes de espuma. Y es muy bonito cuando vuela, muy bonito, pero también muy contaminado. Y muy pegajoso cuando pasa uno, muy pegajoso, se resbalan, varios se han caído ahí en el espacio de arriba.
Y cuando salimos, entonces me voy con una rama y la espuma la hago a los lados, y entonces ya 4 metros donde libran los animales ya me paso. Sí les hace daño a los animales, se les provoca eso adentro le nombran la orijuela. Es una cosa que se les afecta el hígado, el bofe, y a las borregas también les pasa eso, porque nos hemos matado a algunas borregas que están como, en vez de sangre, es agua adentro, tienen mucha agua. Es la contaminación del agua que les afecta.
Tenemos presencia de estaño, antimonio, presencia de cobalto y bromo.
¿Tú te comerías este maíz?
No sería recomendable, no.
Nosotros regamos con el agua que viene de México, ya que este tipo de agua para nosotros es muy rica, porque nosotros no utilizamos abonos. Antes, cuando era agua blanca, daban nomás 2 toneladas, y muy a fuerza. Y hoy nos da un producto de, por decir, de 10 toneladas hasta 15 toneladas de maíz. Porque seguido hay investigaciones por salubridad y con agua no nos vende un recibo para algún cultivo que sí se detengan esos contaminantes, pues no nos lo permiten. Y nosotros los campesinos de allí vivimos y parte de nuestra familia. Entonces, al no haber agua aquí, pues tendríamos que emigrar a donde hubiera vida, sea al DF o a Estados Unidos, pues tendríamos que emigrar.
Lo que es muy preocupante es que desafortunadamente, por lo mismo de lo que contiene esta agua, con la que se riegan aquí muchas milpas y lo que nosotros solemos, pues hay muchas enfermedades de cáncer, mucha incidencia de cáncer en las familias. Se aferra uno a morir donde están sus viejos.
Ves una foto, es una postal y dices qué lugar tan bello. Pero imagínate la contaminación. Pues ahora aquí han hecho un centro turístico donde se alquilan lanchas y hay restaurantes donde venden el pescado que sacan de la misma presa.
El agua es la del río Tula. Pues no se ve tan sucia, así que para nosotros es lo más importante, que no traiga aguas negras.
Aquí se da lo que es la lechuga, la coliflor, el repollo, que es la col, perejil, cilantro, rábanos.
¿Sabe cuál es el distrito de riego al que pertenece este cultivo?
Me parece que es el del río de Aguas Negras, de la que viene desembocando de la Ciudad de México hacia el Valle del Mezquital, que por cierto le han puesto el río de la venganza, que porque ellos nos mandan el drenaje y nosotros se lo mandamos en mercancía para que lo vuelvan a comer. Nos los mandan y se lo volvemos a regresar. Bueno, ese es el comentario que todos cuentan.
Del DF nos mandan caca y se las regresamos en alimentos. Así de sencillo, así lo mencionamos aquí. Y sí, es la verdad, ¿no? De que nos mandan la mugre y se las regresamos en alfalfa, en pescado, en leche, en verduras, en legumbres. Es triste, pero así estamos.
Si esta ciudad necesita un pinche plan integral de cómo pueden manejar las aguas, porque realmente es absurdo que en una ciudad donde llueve suficiente como para que sea un lago gigantesco, no haya suficiente aguas. Yo creo que este año sí entramos a Xochimilco y a Magdalena. Sí. Cómo va como creciendo lentamente la cosa, ¿no? Es muy bonito. Es como cuando haces una fogatita y le vas soplando y va como agarrando más y más. Hola. ¿Aquí estoy bien? Hola. Hola, Enrique. Mucho gusto. Ponemos sistemas de captación de agua de lluvia de todo tipo, desde comunidades rurales, trabajamos con comunidades indígenas que están... Lo irónico es que ustedes están en la ciudad, pero es una situación parecida de ir a caminar con animales y todo. Buenas tardes. Hola, Enrique, ¿qué tal? Hola, David. Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo está usted? Buenas tardes. Enrique, ¿qué tal? Pues buenísimo, ¿no?
Sí. Ok, pues...
Pues nos ponemos a trabajar, ¿no? Vamos echándole coco de cómo poner un primer sistema pues lo antes posible para que ya vayamos aprendiendo en estas lluvias. por favor, entre más ustedes mismos también nos van diciendo qué se necesita y van llevando la batuta, pues mejor, porque pues, ustedes conocen a su comunidad y a sus necesidades más que nosotros. Y sale porque sale. Aquí, donde se necesita y la gente está organizada y dispuesta a trabajar, las cosas se logran.
Piensas que te puedes morir, pero ¿a poco crees que te tienes que quedar callada? ¿Verdad que no?
Una población bien informada se vuelve un demandante de soluciones bien dirigidas hacia sus autoridades.
No nos queda mucho tiempo, tenemos máximo 8 o 10 años para realmente lograr la sustentabilidad. Tenemos que trabajar mucho, o sea, sociedad y gobiernos, para poder salir adelante y lograr la sustentabilidad de México, que es posible, pero hay que empezar ya.
You're all still there. Let's talk about water. Let's give the movie a hand. It's funny, I look at that movie, I've seen it many times, and the idea that there's anything connected to here from that movie seems amazing. But the idea that there are actually dogs that die because of the water, the idea that that could be in Mexico, yeah, that's acceptable, but the idea that that could happen here, I think I would like the house lights up a little bit because I can't see you guys. And the way we're going to work is that I was going to do beautiful introductions, but I'm going to have everyone, we have a very, very illustrious panel today. And I thank you all for coming. And I'll have you each introduce yourself and say a little bit and explain why it is you think about water.
My name's Peter Van Scoik, and I sit on the town board as deputy supervisor. I've served for 5 years in the town of East Hampton. I'm on the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee for the CPF as an ex officio member, the Waterfront Advisory Committee. I also sit on the Committee for Coastal Assessment and Resiliency Planning, and I'm liaison to the Natural Resources Department and Aquaculture Departments in East Hampton. And living on an island surrounded by water and being composed primarily of water, water has always concerned me. It's part of the fabric of our life here in East Hampton, and preserving the water quality and improving the environment are key to my efforts and focus.
Hi, thank you for having us. I'm County Legislator Bridget Fleming. I serve on the Suffolk County Legislature. My district is the 2nd legislative district, which runs from East Moriches to Montauk and includes Shelter Island. And I was on the Southampton Town Board for many years, focused quite a bit on natural resources and specifically water. I think one of the things at the very end of the film, which I think we do have in common and all communities have in common, is that a well-informed and outspoken community pushing on their government will get the needs of the community met. And I think that's certainly something that we've been responsive to. I think on the east end of Long Island, where I serve in local government, we've really listened to the community, because here our natural resources, particularly water, are really the engine that run our economy. So I think we're a little fortunate in comparison to the folks in the film in that we understand and sort of have the access to the means to fight against some of this large-scale pollution. I found that a very difficult film to watch. Heartbreaking, really. But we're fortunate to have a lot of great scientists here and folks who work hard in the community to keep us in local government and even on higher levels pushing forward toward progress. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask you a question, actually, even though it's not going to be linear, and it'll go back and forth between you as well as us, and please organize any questions that you might have.
We're getting the sense that nonlinear is your way to be, Linda.
Very nonlinear. That's why I'm sitting here. When you think of the issues and you get pressure from your constituents, where do you go for the information to figure out what to do? What do policymakers need from which communities to help them make decisions?
That's such a great question, and I thought the young man Enrique, who was sort of organizing the rainfall projects, he said something really profound in the last group of people he was with, and he said, "You are the folks who know what your needs and concerns are. I need to hear from you," which was really interesting. So I think on the local level, we're in a good position, Peter and I, to have folks like Sarah Davison, who we'll hear from, but people in citizens advisory committees and folks who live in the, for instance, on the neighboring impaired waterways, who can really tell us what their needs and concerns are. The baymen, the folks who rely on marine industries for their living, people who have been in the agricultural community for centuries out here or living off the water. So that's super important. And then we have these great institutions like Stony Brook and people like Chris Dr. Gobler, who has been working for years now to bring nitrogen pollution to our attention. And it really is, we're so lucky that we are far ahead. Well, there are a lot of reasons why we're distinct from that enormous population in Mexico City, but we do have folks like who were locally educated and who understand the needs and concerns of the marine ecology. We're super lucky. And there used to be Southampton College in Southampton, now is part of SUNY, but it produced so many scientists who are really all over the world and certainly up and down the East Coast who are dealing with issues of coastal resiliency, nitrogen pollution, contamination of water, because they grew up where it's so important, I think.
That's a great segue. Chris, introduce yourself and explain the story you told us before about the Bayman.
Sure. So I'm Chris Gobler.
Thank you.
I'm a professor at the School of Marine Atmospheric Sciences at Stony Brook University. And I study the water. And the story that Linda wants me to relay is the fact that when I was had a summer job back in the 1980s, I worked for an organization where once a week they'd bring in speakers about different environmental issues. And I did the job for 3 years. There's only one speaker I remember, but it was transformative in my life because it was a Bayman. And I remember everything he said. But the thing that struck me the most is how he explained that he was a Bayman, his father was a Bayman, his grandfather was a Bayman, but the circle was about to be broken because he and his family had always harvested shellfish from Great South Bay, and the clams were gone. And that tradition was over, and his son would not be doing that. In fact, he wouldn't even be continuing to do that. And I was really struck by it, and I asked him why. And he said, well, brown tide. And I said, well, but why? And he couldn't give me an answer. And that actually inspired me to pursue my graduate degrees at Stony Brook, trying to get the answer, why do we have these brown tides? And I guess I've been at it ever since. And through the years, my research has also evolved towards beyond identifying the cause, what the problems in coastal waters are and the cause of those problems, now working towards solutions so that we can implement those solutions in our coastal communities to improve water quality and hopefully bring back the vibrant fisheries and ecosystems that we used to have for decades and centuries.
Chris, do you think it's possible?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm an optimist, and there's absolutely hope. You see a film like that, and you wonder because the enormity of it. But one of the most hopeful things now is the fact that we have government working for us and with us on this issue. They've been incredibly receptive in my mind, at the state, county, and town, and even village level, community level. And people are embracing the issues and wanting to see change and working towards that change. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly I would say the last 3 or 4 years, the momentum towards addressing the issue. The county calls it "Reclaim Our Waters," and it's a great theme. And I think that's exactly what's happening. And so, it may take time and it may be non-linear, but I definitely see us being in a very hopeful position right now.
Mm-hmm. And you think that the nature can come back, the nature is resilient enough that the damage is not so bad that the resilience of nature can still breathe and come back alive?
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing, so yes, with the caveat that, we don't know exactly how everything will come back. That term linear came up again. It may be nonlinear. Yeah. We may get back to a system that has most, but not necessarily all of the components that we are looking for because ecosystems are dynamic and because the climate is changing at the same time, things like nitrogen is changing.
Thank you. Sean.
Thank you, Linda.
Whoa.
I am Sean Fisher from the United States Geological Survey. I'm a hydrologist, which means I too study water. We study natural resources throughout the country. We have offices in every state. We study earthquakes, volcanoes. My office, we study water resources, the geology, the hydrology, water quality, quantity, I was born and raised on Long Island, so I'm really interested in the issues that are surrounding not only the bays, but the groundwater, how everything we do on the land gets into the water, and then we pump it back out and drink it. So I'm sure we'll get into that at some point on the panel. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
I love having Sean on the panel because the USGS, I work with Quasi, and I mentioned it earlier, it's the Consortium of Universities for the Advancement of Hydrologic Science, Inc. It's this horrible acronym, this horrible phrase, but the head of it used to be from the USGS, and the new director is from the USGS, and what the USGS represents to me is data. And in a way, to make decisions, you need really good data, and so having the USGS as part of this wonderful team is a really strong component of the story that will emerge. And last but not least.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Davison. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of Georgia Capon Foundation, and I'm an ecologist by training and native Long Islander as well. I'm thrilled to be on this panel with leaders in our local government, one of our leading scientists, and the USGS, which again, as Linda said, provides data and background for what's happening here on Long Island. I worked for many years for the Nature Conservancy, and we took a big picture, global view of the environment and conservation. And now I have the luxury of working at a very small scale on one pond, Georgia Capon. And it's a real pleasure to work with the Friends of Georgia Capon Foundation. And what we learn and find at Georgia Capon, we want to share and leverage with other ponds here on the East End. That film is really powerful, and I'm glad we're never going to get to that state, but let's talk about what we can do to prevent to get even close to that.
So one of the images I find compelling about this is the idea of aquifers, and what is an aquifer, and what is groundwater, and what is the connection between what we saw in the movie in terms of that aquifer and our aquifer. And if you just want to jump in and describe.
I think one of the most striking differences between what we saw in Mexico City and here is that Mexico City is a built environment where there is almost no natural space and places which would recharge to an aquifer. And here we've taken great pains to protect open space, recognizing that certain areas of town particularly recharge water very well. They're usually very sandy soils. And so we spent a lot of time years ago identifying and protecting those areas and building upon those. Because really, I think a lot of the problems that we see in that film relate to a breaking of the water cycle. So I think, you know, we still have many of the same issues in terms of road runoff and the contribution of those pollutants to water bodies, and we're starting to address and deal with those much more effectively with you know, rain gardens and bioswales and whatnot. But
this idea of recharge, if I'm not mistaken, sometimes I don't understand something. In the movie, it refers to the idea that they have to drill so deep, and there's actually so little water there, that they actually want to pump water back in to the aquifer in order to get water out again? What is up with that? I mean, is that really doable, and does that make sense? And why don't they just keep the water on the surface and distribute it a different way?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's actually done a fair number of places throughout the country with both water that's pulled from other areas of the state that has a surplus, surface waters, or just treated sewage. And they do it not only to recharge the aquifer, but in some cases to actually stop land subsidence. In Virginia, there's an instance where they're trying to prevent the land from continuing to sink. But around here, we have an ample supply of fresh water underground. It's the quality that's of concern, and the fact that we're still on septic in most of Suffolk County, and the long residence time, which means the amount of time that it takes for the water to fall to transport through the aquifer down and across, that could make it take longer than we would expect. Particular technologies, you think maybe you put something in to treat your water and it's going to fix the problem, but it's going to take a while. Yeah, and that kind of.
No, not necessarily.
No, I did want to note that, this forum and every forum is a really important opportunity to point out to folks who may not realize that our sole source of drinking water are the aquifers that are under our feet. Like Mexico City, we have 3 levels of aquifer, very different components, but still the 3. And those aquifers are fed by rainwater. So that's where it comes from.
Could you describe the components when you say 3 components, what that means?
I don't think I should do that with Sean on the panel, but I do know we have the glacial aquifer that was created about 10,000 years ago, and that's where most of our drinking water comes from. Here on the East End. Then there's the Magathie level, which is very old, hundreds of millions of years old. Yes? Yeah. And then below that is the Lloyd Aquifer, which is even older.
About 40.
40. And then the Lloyd Aquifer is the very old one. So, I mean, they're the scientists. But I'm a politician and a government official, and I can say that we really need to make sure that folks understand there's really no mystery to it. It's almost like that really kind of troubling scenario that the farmers talked about, that you send bad water, we send it back as bad produce. I mean, that you get what you put into the ground. And we are really fortunate, Peter and I, because we work for governments that are supported by this community, and so we have done things like banned plastic bags, and we have pesticide limitations. You can't use pesticides in the off season here. There are many things that we've done, and many more that we need to do. I think with regard to septic, we at the county level, I think, have made some pretty serious mistakes over the course of the last few decades. Chris.
What way?
Well, Chris mentioned that, now the understanding about the water contamination, particularly of our surface waters with regard to nitrogen and other contaminants, is very well recognized and pretty well supported. The new state budget has $2.5 billion in it for water quality. Tomorrow night in Flanders, I'll be joining the county executive to announce a proposal that would help folks put in new septic systems because they're a little bit more expensive than the conventional systems that don't take out the nitrogen. That's just one of many programs that we at the state and local levels are rolling out. But it's only recently. I want to ask Chris, the nitrogen problem was identified, I think, or at least recognized to a certain extent, I think, many years ago.
Yeah, we've always known that coastal marine ecosystems are highly sensitive to nitrogen, right? So that was established decades ago.
And why is that?
Because it's what is known as the element in most limiting supply. And so that is, there's enough of everything else, so the more nitrogen that goes in, the more the plants or algae respond.
Can you explain that? Because that's a story that's often in all the articles that I've been reading.
Yeah, I mean,
conditions out here.
Sure. So it's the what they call the marine paradigm, and so nitrogen levels are lower than the amount of, say, phosphorus that's needed by plants, or silicon, or trace metals, and so then the more that goes in, the more the algae respond and grow, and then that can start a whole sequence of events whereby the overgrowth of algae can shade out seagrass, and then they can, that seagrass is important for fisheries, both finfish and shellfish, and then the fisheries begin to decline, there's less filter feeding of the water, then there's more algae, and you get the wrong types of algae. So it's a whole cascading event. But just to play off of one thing that Bridget said that I think is very interesting, I said this earlier today to somebody else, and they were fascinated by it, that some people have well water, and when you have well water, you're very aware of what your water supply is. You get the idea that whatever's happening on land's going right into my well. And then other people have what they sometimes call city water or county water. But the interesting thing is if you live here and anywhere really in Suffolk County, your water is almost certainly coming from the Suffolk County Water Authority, and on average, the distance that water travels is less than 3 miles, which means, so some people have the thought, oh, well, it's all coming from the Pine Barrens. Well, if you live on the Pine Barrens, then the answer is yes, but if it's not, it's coming from your neighborhood, which means that whatever you and your neighbors are doing on your land and in your neighborhood, again, less than 3 miles, is what you get to drink. And then even further, that water that's not being consumed for drinking water, if it doesn't get consumed, is then seeping into the coastal waters and exacting a toll on the coastal marine ecosystem. So, when it comes to groundwater and the connection between land and groundwater and the marine water, everything is very closely connected.
I have a lot of things I want to say. When you mentioned the Pine Barrens, I spend a lot of time in New Jersey and love the Pine Barrens there, and they have very strict laws about developing in the Pine Barrens. And I know this is a sort of fiery topic out here, but there's a proposed development for condos and a golf course. Is that actually going to be in the Pine Barrens? They want to use that property, or it's contiguous to the Pine Barrens?
Well,
and what is the current story there?
There are different
And how
parts.
would it affect the quality of the water, would you say?
Well, there is something called the core Pine Barrens, which is treated one way in terms of regulation because of its environmental sensitivity.
Where are they located? What's the boundary of the core?
It's
Quogue or
Riverhead, Brookhaven, and Southampton towns are contained in the core preservation area, and then there's the compatible growth area around that. Also, those 3 towns, and it totals about 100,000 acres.
So for that development, the part that's in the core Pine Barrens cannot be built upon. So that won't happen. There is compatible growth area that has restrictions, and I believe that the development proposes some development there. I was on the town board in Southampton when that was first proposed. What they're asking for is a zoning change. So they want what's called a planned development district, which would allow the developer to go outside of the normal zoning that's in place in order to build what they want to build, which is what you call the as-of-right development, the amount of homes that you could build on there. Because of the sensitivity of that huge, it's the last biggest privately owned part of East Quogue, actually, and actually part of Southampton. East Quogue is a hamlet in Southampton, but at any rate, that's already been upzoned so that you can only build 1 house per 5 acres on that because of its sensitivity. But what the developers would like to do, and full disclosure, I've been adamantly opposed to this project since I was on the town board and was the only one who voted no when it came out of the chute.
And why are you?
Well, just to finish the thought, that they are proposing to put the regular as-of-right zoning. I think it's 86 homes.
118.
Okay, it started out.
We
as
have an
86
amazing panel
when I
up
was on
here.
the town board.
You want facts? You got facts.
So they want to do that, and in addition, build a golf course with a rather large clubhouse. And there is some support for it in the community from an economic development standpoint. In my view, we don't need another golf course. And although there is the developers tell us that they're going to use these very advanced ways of treating the fertilizer and the pesticides that go into a golf course. In my view, the water that is beneath a golf course is going to be purer if there is no golf course than it is if there is a golf course, no matter how carefully you treat it or crunch the numbers, which has been happening over the course of the several years that it's been proposed. But in my view, it's a mega development that just doesn't belong in that pristine landscape.
It's very interesting. I know you're out there, and I want to ask you a question, but I wanted to just comment about something. One of the reasons Let's Talk About Water exists is the idea that scientific information is complicated, and that the idea of bridging the gap between the public and the scientific community, as well as policymakers, figuring out what policymakers need to know, and having there be a flow amongst the information. Here we have a very, very unique community because it's already happening, and it's already being written about, and people are accessible, and on the stage are all the cast of characters that you'd need to be able to really make effective decisions that protect the environment. But then I like reading the New York Post. I like seeing what the other side is thinking. The gossip column is great. I actually love the horoscopes. And so I see an article about the hills. And so I've been reading about it and finding out that it isn't something people really want. But they quote Ed Norton, and they say, Ed Norton, we all know him, we all love him, he's in the movies. He's actually a really strong environmentalist because he does this and that and this and that. He thinks the hills is a great idea. And this story was so compelling to me because when it's the idea of what's information that's really the truth, what's going to affect our future, and how do we make decisions about how to think about the world around us and to try to protect it. And so I kind of also want to ask you guys, how do you counter when they pull up an iconic figure that people love, and he's an environmentalist, and he has the credibility? How do you argue with it? It's just like when you say the facts are so-and-so, and the developers say, I like to talk a lot, so I apologize. I never let the panel. They're all like, and they want to talk. But no, I won't let them. The idea of, where do you find your way between the idea of people selling you on an idea and convincing you that they're green, they're going to be a green golf course, and you know more than they, that you can say, no, that is actually not going to be the case. Sarah, I saw you.
Well, there's a really very used phrase that's been used here for decades now on the East End, and it is, the environment is the economy. And there's no question that we have this $1 trillion real estate industry because we have clean water, we have beautiful forests, we have beautiful bays and clamming and shellfishing and fishing. And that environment is supporting a very, very robust and healthy economy out here. Our tax rates are low because our infrastructure costs are low, and we do not need another golf course and high-density residential development. We need to retrofit and redesign existing development that we have and protect the Pine Barrens, protect our recharge, and protect our surface water.
Well, that seems like my thinking too. Let me open it up to you guys. It's a little bit awkward. I wish we were closer, but Kathleen is wonderfully out there with a microphone, and of course it's a little hard to see with all this bright. This theater is so gorgeous, but it's like, we should do Hamlet or something. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you, darling. Anyone with questions out there? Please. And can you say your name and what you do or how you came to come here?
My name is Brad. I saw the article in the local paper. My question, I guess, is a little bit different, but I live out in Clearwater, and I just noticed recently with the town preservation, buying lots for preservation, that some of these lots actually, I'm near Hog Creek, and that they've actually got runoffs from the road that they've built. I mean, I assume these things were done decades ago, but I'm not really quite sure what is today's standard, that they run them sometimes 100 feet, 100 yards into Hog Creek, so that you actually have the runoff from the roads with the oils, and you'll see an oil slick. What is the standard practice today? I was just kind of curious. It doesn't seem to me like that's a very environmentally good idea. I'm not sure why you wouldn't just have a sinkhole right by the road to take the runoff, but.
Well, that's a great question. And traditionally, the highway department in the town and in many other areas where we don't have storm drains connected to storm sewers simply have leaching pools and inlets, and that water gets charged back into the ground. In other areas, there is water, surface water that runs off into our bays and harbors. You mentioned Hog Creek. We actually have a pilot program that we're going to be working with to install permeable reactive barriers, which basically are a way to filter out pollutants, particularly nitrogen, and runoff into the creeks. We've also had a very aggressive open space preservation program through the CPF, and have purchased a number of properties that are shorefront in Hog Creek. And actually, Hog Creek is the site of our oyster gardening program, which this year we've expanded. We've tripled that in size, and it allows residents to help grow out oysters. And as some of you may know, one adult oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water a day. And this oyster grow out will help restore habitat within Hog Creek. And I think some of what was mentioned here earlier, part of the problem is that we've overloaded our natural systems to the point where they cannot conduct the regular processing of nutrients and loading that they normally would. We've lost eelgrass from most of our creeks and harbors. This takes up nitrogen. This allows for finfish and shellfish to have a nursery. So we've overburdened the system, and if we can reduce nitrogen to the point where we can start to reestablish these natural processes, not only will it add to just the quality of the water, but it will add to the productiveness of those waters in terms of fish and shellfish.
Anyone else want to respond, or anyone out there want to ask a question?
Yes,
There's one up front here.
I have a question.
Where are you?
At the camera. First part of the question is, what are the residents of Georgia Pond doing with their septic systems? Because obviously they can afford to do whatever they need to do. And then that may be for Sarah. And then for the local governments, East Hampton and Suffolk County that are here, I have a question about the septic rebate program that you've been talking about for 6 months. It's kind of coming out in the newspapers as if it's all ready to go. And, I live in a waterfront protection district, and I have a 35-year-old septic system that I would like to shut down forever and start anew with low nitrogen protection. But the gist of what I'm getting is the county may only affect 400 homeowners per year, and that the East Hampton rebate program may only be 5 people in one particular harbor and 5 people in Accabonac and 5 people on Fort Pond. And I'm just wondering how much of a fire we have to light with 20% of the CPF money coming into the town. I would think that would be able to speed up the process, because there are a lot of people out there that would like to help do this.
Well, thank you, Bruce. It's a great question. There's been a lot of foundational work that's had to happen on the regulatory side and on the science and technology side in order to get to where we are. Tomorrow evening at the Flanders Community Center, which is 655 Flanders Road up in Flanders, the community center is right there on the road. We are doing, the county executive will be coming out to announce this proposal, which is only a proposal that will be, is scheduled to be rolled out in July, which is to assist homeowners financially with upgrading to the nitrogen removing systems. But bear in mind, that you are now, it is now possible to install one of these systems if you have the willingness and the ability to do it. And it's really important to know that. We, last year at the county level, revised the sanitary code for the first time since 1973. And we did that in order to allow the county to be what's called the responsible management entity to put these systems in place. Bear in mind that Suffolk County has 360,000 individual residential septic systems that need to be upgraded. Some of them are cesspools, which don't even, process wastewater to the current standard, much less remove the nitrogen and other contaminants. So there's a very, very, very big job to do. IBM did a study and put the price tag at $8 billion. So I appreciate your concern that it's not moving quickly enough, but bear in mind that there have been things happening all along. We changed the sanitary code. We are still working on the sanitary code specifications and the sort of questions that everyone is asking. When are you going to require these new systems to be put in place? Will you require them only in the most sensitive areas that are close to recharging into the surface waters? Will you require them when there's new construction or substantial renovation? Or do we want to trigger the requirement when a property transfers ownership? I mean, all those questions are being ironed out and debated at the legislature right now. So we have to get there to when we require it. But bear in mind, there are 3 systems that have been approved. There have been 2 pilot programs that have already been run. One is underway right now, testing 19 new technologies. And so it's possible 3 of them have been, over the course of the past year, approved. We have to be super careful that we're not approving systems that we're going to find fail down the road. So the pilot programs have been done very, very carefully. And so if you have a question, if you want to do it, you can call my office, which is 631-852-8400. My district office is on Washington Street in Sag Harbor. Stop by anytime and we can talk about it. The financial help, the pilot program, which is $11,000 grant program, and then the potential for a very low interest loan to cover any additional costs, may, if it's approved by the legislature, go into effect in July. And you're right, that'll cover we've got $2 million per year to spend out of the assessment stabilization fund. But that'll cover $400 a year. The CPF programs in East Hampton and Southampton also will, as you point out, have money to spend to support these programs. But as of now, the systems have been approved, some of them. We have the regulatory structure in place to be able to help you get them permitted and in place so we can start moving forward. Thanks to Chris and Sarah and the folks who've worked on this for so many years, we are suddenly in a place where it is possible to take that step as a homeowner and start reversing the impairment of our waters.
I just want to add on to what Bridget said. In terms of the process of Suffolk County has the authority and responsibility through the Suffolk County Health Department to approve wastewater systems. That's not something that comes to the town. We've had a system in place for treating individual septic waste that is only marginally more advanced than what the Romans were using 2,000 years ago. So, there is a process underway, and I commend the county for being responsive to requests and pressures from East End towns particularly to move forward with nitrogen reduction. And, to their credit, they've done a great deal of work, and we've moved the ball forward a great deal. As far as a septic rebate program within the town of East Hampton, Bruce, you mentioned 5 here, 5 there. Those are pilot programs where a county has installed these systems in order for approvals to be made on those systems. They test a number of systems in various locations to make sure that they actually do what they're set out to do. But based on the revenue of the CPF fund over the last 10 years,
I'm assuming you all know what CPF is?
The Community Preservation Fund, which is 2% transfer tax on properties when they're sold. We have generated between $4 and $6 million a year. 20% of that fund would be $4 to $6 million a year to put towards wastewater improvement. That's $150 million over the course of the between now and 2050. So we have funding in place to make improvements. We are somewhat waiting for more systems to be approved by the county. There's going to be a little bit of a lag time, but we've been talking about a rebate system that would give homeowners up to $15,000 or 100% up to $15,000 for all surveys, permits, installation work, and the actual units. And we think that that's a substantial incentive for a number of people. In addition, we're likely to make the requirement of installing an innovative system for all new construction and any reconstruction that's substantial, over 50% of the home. So
let me tell you about how we're approaching it at Georgia Capon, the Friends of Georgia Capon Foundation. Georgia Capon sits in the Georgia Capon watershed. That's a watershed of about 4,000 acres. And in that 4,000 acres are 2,000 homes. There's also the high school, the Ross School, the Hamlet of Wainscott. There's a lot of pine barrens in that watershed too, fortunately. So thanks to people like USGS and Dr. Gobler, the travel time of that groundwater in the watershed of Georgia Pond has been mapped and assessed for how long it takes to travel to get to Georgia Pond. Because what we're talking about is the nitrogen contamination of our groundwater reaching surface water, which is what Georgia Pond is. So we're just taking it one step at a time. We're looking at all the homes within the 2-year travel time of the pond, which those are the homes closest to the pond. And there's 75 homes that are front directly on Georgia Pond. And the first nitrogen-reducing system is about to go in one of those homes. One of the challenges is that the technology, as Bridget mentioned, there's only 3 that are approved, and those are all good systems, but some of them are not going to work at Georgia Pond because they're designed for year-round residences. They may work very well where you are, but at Georgia Pond, where we have seasonally occupied homes, very typically, these systems need to be fed all year long. Another problem with some of the new systems is that they can't work very well in high water table situations, which is also the case at some of the homes at Georgia Pond. So we are proceeding studiously and with great dedication, but waiting for new technology, like from the Center for Clean Water Technology that Dr. Gobler is involved with. As the technology improves and new systems continue to come on, we will, endorse and advocate their installation at Georgia Pond. And, within a decade, if we can get conversion within the 2-year travel time, the water quality will be significantly impacted in a positive way.
I just wanted to mention, first of all, the Georgia Pond neighbors have been incredibly committed to this process, and it's really fantastic to see. We're all watching because the Department of Environmental Conservation a couple of years, I guess it was just last year, identified 10 ponds or 10 surface water bodies in Suffolk County that were affected by the HABs, the harmful algal blooms. 7 of the 10 were in my district, which includes Southampton and East Hampton. So we're all watching what's happening in these partially enclosed water bodies, such as Georgia Pond, so that we can use the great work that they're doing to continue to move forward. But I wanted to mention also at the beginning of your remarks, Linda, at the beginning of our evening here, you mentioned subwatersheds and the importance of considering subwatersheds in this work. And just in response to Bruce's question, too, about how long it's taking, the county health department is undertaking a subwatershed plan, a comprehensive subwatershed plan. You notice in the movie, they said we don't have a water plan. I mean, you've got to do planning around this stuff to most effectively use the funding that we have. So they are going to be finishing that by the end of this year, which is basically working with the USGS, an examination of where the water's moving, how fast it's moving, into what water bodies, so that we can begin to test, or we can begin to assess where it's most effective to use these programs that Peter was talking about in East Hampton or Southampton, or our program at the county level, to ensure that the money is most effectively used to reduce or reverse the impairment.
And Bridget has mentioned watersheds as part of this town-wide wastewater.
These guys are
management
great,
plan.
aren't they? They're just go ahead.
We did a town-wide wastewater management plan, which we initiated several years ago, and part of that was studying the various town watersheds, of which we have roughly broken into 9 different sections. We've completed a watershed study for Lake Montauk. The other watersheds have partial studies, Accabonac and 3 Mile Harbor, but we also have water protection districts that are associated with each watershed, where we've delineated harbor protection districts, areas that with the short travel time of groundwater, where inputs into those systems are most direct. And within those areas, there are already a number of water protection regulations, but we would also prioritize these areas within the water protection districts for remediation. Those would be our top priorities, because the sooner we can eliminate those inputs, the sooner we can start to see a turnaround.
And how does climate change affect all this? Is there a worry? I mean, there's a question behind my question, which is, and again, if you have questions, you have to raise your hand, and then there'll be a mic right in your mouth. Oh, Paul has one. Maybe we'll take Paul's question, because I could talk forever, as you know.
I think I got a question for Sean. Seemed like you're quiet up there. You need something to say. Georgia Pond specifically, where does the water come from? Where does the water come from? And is it affected by the tide of the ocean?
Sure. There's a lot of talk about watershed, and if folks aren't familiar with what a watershed is, it's the area in which the groundwater contributes to the surface water body that's nearby, whether it's a stream, like we have all across the island, or water bodies. And Georgia Pond gets its fresh water from the ground, from the shallow aquifers, from the water table, and then it's affected by tide when it's opened, or when there's water that comes from the ocean over the dune.
When it's not connected to the ocean, it's not affected by the tide.
Well, hydraulically it is, meaning that the water, if the water is sort of the tides, when the tides go up and down, the groundwater to an extent inland can be affected by the tide, just by the up and down motion of the ocean. Could also move the fresh water in and out. And as it's flowing, the water is actually flowing, the groundwater on the South Shore, roughly a foot a day horizontally.
All right.
But it doesn't just go in one direction. It kind of pumps in and out,
So
and goes up and down
there's
a
a
little
point
bit.
when Georgia Pond is higher than the ocean, like low tide?
Yeah.
Would it make any sense to have some kind of a floodgate there during low tide to flush out like the top 6 inches of Georgia Pond, and then close it when the high tide comes, just to keep flushing it out as a temporary way to clean it before you?
Well, I'll have to defer the question. The USGS is non-regulatory, and we don't have opinions. We only provide data for the use of for the use of.
I don't need data. I need an opinion.
Well, the data that we provide are used by regulators and management for their own decisions.
Maybe Chris could answer.
I'll just mention quickly.
You know what I mean? Like if the
yeah,
water level
and that
in
sort of
Georgia
system has
higher,
been set up.
Are you hearing the questions and the answers? I don't want to
flush it out when the
yeah,
tide
those sorts of systems have been set up in a few places along the South Shore, Lake Agawam and Hook Pond as well. They can work in draining the system, as you suggested. The one issue, though, of course, is that the wave energy on the ocean makes those sorts of systems difficult to be always successful. They easily fill with sand. Storm events can fill them in and clog them, and so they've been had mixed or minimal success.
Oh, now we have a lot of questions. Good.
I have a very, very basic question here. Why is
In the mic.
why is nitrogen bad?
Yes.
So
excellent,
great question, and I'll get the phrase wrong, but there somewhat at some point someone said there's no such thing as bad nitrogen. It's just nitrogen misplaced, right? And so the idea is, on the one hand, you're absolutely correct in that our marine ecosystems run on nitrogen. And if we didn't have any nitrogen, we'd have no photosynthesis and no plants, and the whole ecosystem would shut down. But what it's becoming is too much of a good thing. And so that is, as I mentioned earlier, the amount of nitrogen that's going in is affecting the growth of algae and other what we call primary producers in the ecosystem. So it's coming from land, and the primary source in Suffolk County is from wastewater. So I'll throw some facts at you that when I hear them astonish me. If Suffolk County was its own city, we'd be the 5th most populous city in the United States, behind New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Houston. If Suffolk County was its own country, we'd be the 7th most populous country in the whole world. Okay, so there's a lot of people here, and unfortunately, as Bridget mentioned earlier, almost all of us are not connected to sewage treatment plants, but have these individual on-site septic systems that get filled with 10 pounds of nitrogen every year from each individual person contributing to them, and they eliminate almost none of the nitrogen that goes in there by the way they're designed. and then that's going into the groundwater. And so we've seen almost 100% rise in the levels of nitrogen in the groundwater since about 1980. And so these levels are going up, the algae grow more dense. In some cases, we're getting the algae that are either toxic to humans and can actually poison us, can poison animals. And in other cases, the algae are not harmful to us at all, but they can be toxic to marine life, shellfish, fish, and seagrasses. And so on the one hand, nitrogen is a good thing. You know, when man learned how to create nitrogen fertilizer out of nitrogen gas, it was called the population explosion population explosion bomb, I think, because it was the idea that we could suddenly feed a lot more people than we could before, which is a wonderful thing. However, and when it's in excess in a marine ecosystem and you pass that tipping point, it begins to exact an unwanted toll.
In the movie, we were seeing...
This way. You talk into the mic.
In the movie, we were talking about chromium levels and other chemical levels. Do we have other chemicals in our water too? Or about this, is nitrogen just an aggressive, has more aggressive property to push the other molecules out of the system? Or what is it about? I mean, this whole thing is about nitrogen and the levels. So a lot of us are not scientists. We don't really understand the significance of the nitrogen, which seems to be very, very important. So even what you've just said is informative, but still seem to be missing something. Is this a chemical reaction? Does the nitrogen bond with the water molecule to change its properties?
That's the troubling thing about the nitrogen is that once it gets in the groundwater, it's virtually not chemical reactive. And so it goes, once it gets through that septic tank, it's on its way, and there's nothing that's going to stop that. Whereas, for example, another nutrient element we would worry about would be phosphorus. But as it turns out, the phosphorus actually gets bound up in the aquifer and doesn't make its way through. And with regard to trace metals are usually the biggest concern in areas where there's a lot of industrial activity. We don't have that out here. So that's why, at least in our marine systems, nitrogen is a big concern. I will just mention that, beyond nitrogen, we are starting to worry about things, for example, personal care products that people use or pharmaceuticals that people may be taking that are now showing up in the aquifer and there's a concern for drinking water. So nitrogen is certainly not the only issue of concern, particularly when it comes to drinking water, but in marine waters, it really, the phrase you could use is that the nitrogen is driving the bus, so to speak, in the marine ecosystem.
But, another good point just to think about on that is we're talking about the surface waters and marine systems, but in terms of groundwater, we should always keep an eye on the other contaminants as well. There's been some concern about chromium-6 in my district, about PFAS, which is a perchlorinated, compound? I almost got the whole thing right without the scientists. At any rate, there are some contaminants that we want to be careful of. I mean, as we've said, what you do on the surface, you end up drinking because our drinking water comes from what we do on the surface of the land. But we do have the public water authorities that treat the water, and actually the Suffolk County Water Authority has a really good system called WaterTrack, which is fairly new. You can put a contaminant into the system and see if it shows up in any public water throughout the county. But if you're on a private well, it doesn't hurt getting your water tested on a regular basis once a year, just to be sure. But it's up to us to steward the water, including the drinking water, and make sure those other contaminants aren't getting in there.
I think Sean wanted to say something.
Uh,
Wait, let just Sean answer, and then you're welcome. Your questions are superb, so I'm not trying to cut you off. But Sean.
Sure. I was just going to add to what Chris had said about the metals, and and from a perspective of being in the aquifer, that when we funnel our street runoff when it rains into recharge basins or retention ponds, that sort of concentrates, like the way they said in the movie, some of these pollutants. And it can concentrate metals from our cars, our brake pads when we stop, from industrial waste that's either from a paint shop that's on the side of the road, or a mechanic, or some oils that drop onto the floor, and it all gets. And there are thousands on Long Island that are maintained by the state, the county, the towns, and that's recharging our aquifers. If they're going if they're just discharging directly to surface waters, whether they're harbors, canals, or even freshwater ponds or wetlands, then the same thing's happening, only it's being discharged directly to the water. And we have to worry about not just the metals and also the pharmaceuticals that we use, because when we pump water out of the ground, whether it's our private wells or the public supply wells that's been mentioned already, that accelerates the flow of the water that's in the ground. And the more we pump, the more water that we divert from its natural flow. So when water hits the ground and it percolates down through the sand, or on a big sandbar, it moves relatively quickly and relatively unimpeded, except for some clay lenses or some other geological formations. But for the most part, it makes its way all the way down. And whether it picks up stuff directly on the surface, or runs off and collects and concentrates and then percolates down, or it's something from underground, like our recharge basins, our leaky oil tanks, old gas station tanks, the hundreds of plumes that were created back before groundwater quality was of concern, really. And that makes its way, and it could even be misdirected and flow in the opposite direction of natural flow if the pumping is significant enough. So it's a concern inland, and it's a concern near the shore where the water table is shallow and it's near the surface, and there's a saltwater freshwater lens where there's fresh water on one side and salt on the other, and if we pump too much, it's going to push that salt water in. And just like nitrogen, some forms of nitrogen are conservative, like nitrate, and moves right through the system with unimpeded, like Chris said. Chloride and other salts that are in the ocean can do the same thing. And once our aquifers get exposed to that salt water that's in the ocean because we've pumped too much, then it's really hard to clean, and they have to shut wells down.
Actually, I'd love to get some other people, if you guys.
Could I just quickly make a plug for the fact that pharmaceuticals can be disposed of at your police stations. And also there are a number of pharmacies that will take them back. So don't flush your pharmaceuticals. The DEA used to say to do that, but it goes right into the bay. So don't do it. You want to bring them either to the police station or bring them back. I know South Thrifty Drug in Southampton. You probably have some in East Hampton.
White's Pharmacy in East Hampton will take
White's
them.
Pharmacy.
Can I ask a stupid question in relation to what you're asking? It's the idea of when you take pharmaceuticals and you flush them out, then they go into the water.
That's another reason why we
So you're talking about pharmaceuticals that are not used?
Surplus, left over.
Because I actually had a question for the science. We have the government, we have the scientists, we have the coordinator from the community. The idea of pharmaceuticals, there are a lot of films that I have shown that have stories, a set of stories talking about water quality or water quantity. Pharmaceuticals, one of the most difficult to take out of water once it's in. How is the science proceeding about dealing with pharmaceuticals in the water stream?
Well, with regards to these new systems that are being put in, we were able to test to see how efficient they remove different forms of pharmaceuticals. And so I can speak to, at the university, I'm co-director of the Center for Clean Water Technology, and so we're working on some new systems that not only remove up to 90% of nitrogen that goes through them, but they can remove more than 99% of the pharmaceuticals. So if you get these are biological systems, so if you get the biological activity quite high, they can deal with lots of...
What do you mean by biological? It's like a
bugs. Yeah.
Bacteria. So it's bacteria where it's just creating the environment, so the right kind of bacteria that you want that can degrade nitrogen and other compounds grow rapidly. They're similar to the bacteria that are already in our systems, but you can, by altering the amount of oxygen and the flow of the water, you can select for the different types of bacteria that are differentially effective at doing that.
I mean, a lot of the health issues that people have now, that people see on the rise, have a lot to do with these issues of what's contaminating the water, and pharmaceuticals is a huge one. And we'll throw it back to the audience.
I have two quick questions. Number one, would you buy protein?
Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Okay, and just say your name and...
My name is Bill Sullivan. My quick question is, would you buy produce from Mexico?
It's looking like no.
Number two, on one of the speakers I heard from Amagansett speaking about water quality, it was about detergents, washing your clothes, and it winds up in the water. Some detergents aren't as good as others for the water supply, like the foaming in Mexico that we saw.
Yeah, there's certainly a range. Some detergents are made just to make sure they get clothes as clean as possible, and then others are made to be more biodegradable. And so there's that full spectrum out there. Probably most of the things you get off the shelf would be the kind that don't necessarily degrade, and are now actually showing up. It looks like some of the contaminants we're seeing in some groundwater further west of here, at least, is related to things like detergents. And so we're probably in short order going to be altering the types of detergents that are allowed here in Suffolk County, which of course is deja vu all over again, because that was done 30 or 40 years ago with the phosphorus-free detergents. But there's different types out there, and some of them, the standard off-the-shelf ones, look like they're starting to have an effect on drinking water, at least west of here. And so that might start changing the way they're made. Yeah, I mean, if you, what's the company? Seventh Generation? Have you ever heard of that company? There's a company, comes from the great Iroquois law that every decision we must make, we should consider the impact on the seventh generation. So there's a company called Seventh Generation, and they make low ecological impact products, including detergents.
I'd like to, just make a public service announcement. This Saturday, April 26th at Town Hall, we're having a drug take-back day. The police department will be there from 9 to 2, and you can go to Town Hall and drop off your prescription drugs or your over-the-counter drugs. Also, as Bridget said, the East Hampton Police Department's open 24/7. They have it right in their lobby. The Senior Center on Springs Fireplace Road also has a box where you can drop off prescriptions. And as you said, White's Pharmacy and Park Place Pharmacy at the East Hampton Healthcare Foundation also will take drugs back.
My colleague on the town board, Kathy Burke-Gonzalez. Thanks, Kathy.
Hi, my name is Maziar Behruz. I saw Linda last night at the American Hotel, and her enthusiasm was so contagious. So I broke my ban of public seminars. I find Andrew's going to walk away from me after I make this comment. There's a similarity I find between the movie and out here, which is alarming. I see the movie and I see all these, like, Mexico City is a great city, and there's like many, 22 million people, amazing architects and planners, some really smart people in Mexico City, and the history of it, the architecture of it. And I keep thinking, as I'm watching the movie, why is it that smart people couldn't solve this problem? I mean, it's been going on for so many years in Mexico City, and sure, it's 22 million people. For the past 10 years, I can say the same thing about East Hampton, that none of our government officials have sat down in a critical way in their work sessions, in their town board meetings, to really radically modify the way this town is viewing itself, is viewing its growth. And Larry Penny used to talk about pharmaceuticals in our groundwater, in our aquifers, I think more than 10 years ago, and we're talking about it again today. Septic systems have been it's a poison. We're poisoning our environment with our septic systems. Septic systems are tied to town planning and architectural planning, and no one in the town board sits critically to say, we just can't continue. I've been here 20 years, so if I can see what it used to be like 20 years ago, I can also see what it may be like 20 years from now. And why is it that the government officials, town board, village officials, don't see this as a critical problem? Like, next work session, roll your sleeves up and like solve the problem.
Can I just to defend my friends on the East Hampton Town Board, having sat on the Southampton Town Board for many years, I have to say one of the things that I think Peter already pointed out that's a distinction is the recognition since the 1970s, and it started at the county level, of the importance of open space and our agricultural lands. And we have had groundbreaking, or I should say anti-groundbreaking preservation efforts. Do you see what I did there? Anti-groundbreaking. Anyway, throughout that, we've really, since the 1970s, there's a supervisor by the name of Klein who worked to preserve open space, including, for instance, the Pine Barrens came along after that, all the remarkable farmland that we've preserved despite the unbelievable financial pressure to build mega mansions, the upzoning that has happened, they're very careful with. You have to recognize, I agree with you that we could do better. And I think at the county level, the septic problem is huge and has been largely ignored for many, many years. We were, as you're saying, poisoning our water and doing nothing about it. And I think it was partly because of the pressure, of the economic pressure of developers wanting to make money and development and people wanting to have big houses or big developments up west. But at any rate, I just wanted to defend them a little bit. The preservation efforts of East Hampton in particular and the east end of Long Island have been emulated by Santa Barbara, Maine, Florida, Rhode Island. Just like we're borrowing the septic technology from Rhode Island, they borrowed preservation from efforts from us. It's made a huge difference, and if it weren't for that political will pushing against the financial pressures in as early as the 1970s, we would not have the remarkable landscapes that we do.
I would just like to... Go ahead, Chris.
I just to add in one other aspect, and that is that the county holds the keys when it comes to septic systems. So the town can't do anything, unfortunately, until the county has approved new systems for being put in. And so, I know Larry Cantwell, for example, has been dying to have these new systems installed here in the town of East Hampton, but nothing could be done until August of 2016 when finally Article 19 passed. And so just to point out then that there's been the will and the eagerness to do things, but the county has moved. And I think in some cases, in the right way, carefully to make sure that they're moving, doing things that no one will regret in the future. So I just to point out that there has been the will and the eagerness within the town of East Hampton. But they've really had to wait for the county to approve the systems that they could legally install due to New York State Health Code.
I'd just like to add that we've been extremely proactive in the last several years about dealing with this issue. I believe that we actually are.
Can I ask you why? I don't mean to.
I'm gonna get to that.
Oh, okay.
I mentioned earlier that the town has done a town-wide wastewater management study. We commissioned that in 2013, and it was completed. We adopted it. It formulates the basis of how we believe we need to move forward to address this system. Again, we're somewhat hampered by the fact that we don't have control over what systems get installed and that whole process at the county level. That's the county health department's responsibility to do that. But we've pressured them with large capacity cesspools as well, which were banned in 2005. And yet the county health department has allowed them to continue within the town. So we've pushed very hard, and I'm very encouraged that our efforts are actually gaining traction. The county's become a very willing partner in solving this, and I think that's really key, and that's why we're starting to see some movement. But that was initiated at a town board level here in East Hampton, and I think while that may be lost on some people, it's certainly not lost on me and those who've paid attention to this whole process. And so again, we started saving open space decades ago, and we thought that would protect our waters, that would protect our quality of life. And we've seen that it didn't fully take into account the inputs that we're making into the water through septic systems. And we're dealing with the legacy of development, particularly in some areas that are very dense. And so we need to step beyond just open space preservation and become very active. We've worked very hard to get the legislation to allow up to 20% of the CPF to contribute to fund this effort. So I've never been more encouraged about the prospects of dealing with water quality in the town.
I need to just also thank the local towns for their efforts in the sanitary code revisions, which, as I said, have not happened since 1973. Luckily, because of our current county executive, and he's got a water czar who used to be the regional director of the DEC here, those two have been very open to allowing the local towns to be at the table for the sanitary code revisions. So for the very first time at the county level, we've had attorneys and engineers and planners who are the folks in the building departments who see exactly where the rubber hits the road and when, you know, things are being pushed to the maximum where it's no longer healthy for our environment. Those folks have, for the very first time, been involved in the revisions and the drafting of not only the planning, but also the regulations themselves and the laws themselves. So just a tiny little, for instance, the grandfathering, well, maybe not tiny, it's huge. There's a grandfathering issue. You probably saw it on the cover of the Newsday. It's been in the local papers as well. And our local environmentalists in East Hampton and Southampton are the ones who've been knocking on the door at the county to say this is a health issue that needs to change so that restaurants or other commercial establishments, which had been approved for health department permits decades ago, could continue to generate the same wastewater flow without upgrading their systems. That's about to change. And the reason why it's about to change is because of local advocacy and your local public officials.
One thing I'd like to say, Mazir, thank you for your comment. The idea of this kind of a session, I jumped on it because the articles in the local papers were so full of science and so clear, and the political will from the council people was so different than I was accustomed to. And I, like you, feel this resistance, like I've been out here all this time, I own a house out here, I worry about these things, why isn't there change? But I think each of us have to figure out what's within us that we can contribute to push the change. And being that you're an architect and you think about the intersection of a building on land and how it all interfaces, because one of the things that's revealed in this session, as it is in the movie, the complexity, all these things have so much complexity. And the idea of taking the time to understand the science, or taking the time just to understand the web of intersection between the towns and the counties, and as you move up and down the ladder, these are things that are stultifying. And it's very easy to just pull back and say, you haven't done it. I mean, I'm not criticizing you because I'm like you. And the only reason I decided to throw this project together here in East Hampton with these people, with these subjects, is because there's movement. I see hundreds of movies about the subject. I talk to super smart people in pristine academic environments. The issues go around and around and around. You can become very cynical from this kind of experience. And the thing is that here, it's as if there's a small part of the wedge that's being stuck into the problem and opening up a very beautiful cornucopia of ideas, solutions, practical solutions. And the idea that Chris is a scientist who makes himself available to people and speaks in a very gifted way to simplify the complexity of the science. And now hearing Bridget, because I didn't know her from a personal point of view, how she speaks, and Peter was nice enough to come. Larry Cantwell was going to come, but he couldn't make it, and Peter pinch hit for him. And then actually Sean Fisher is pinch hitting for Chris Schubert, who's the person who's actually working on Georgia Pond. So one thing and of course, our wonderful Sarah Davison, who's behind all of this for many, many, many years. I decided to have a reception after this because I had a feeling that there'd be a lot of questions that you guys might want to continue directly to our wonderful panel. And I'd like to take a moment to just maybe wrap it up. Is that okay with you? Do you feel okay, or you want to ask one more question? And then I'm going to put one more question to all of you.
Sorry, she has the microphone.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to be the last question.
No, it's okay. Just throw yourself in.
My name's Andrea Grover. Hi, Linda.
Darling, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
She's the director of this wonderful facility here.
Very impressed with the quality of the panel, and I know many of you who have presented for me on this subject in the past. Maziar has tackled the subject when I was at the Parrish Art Museum, and even brought in a very sophisticated urban planner from Harvard, Felipe Correa, who talked even on a larger scale about planning between towns. But I have a very simple question, and I think that the community has done a really outstanding job of getting the word out about nitrogen pollution, especially the Nature Conservancy. I've been to some focus groups that they've had. I think it approaches the anti-smoking campaign. I mean, I know more about nitrogen in the 6 years that I've lived here than about any other water issue. But there are other water issues, and I wonder what other contaminants get into the water, what other possibly pesticides, other types of fertilizers might be in our drinking water. Because there is just anecdotally, I know many people under the age of 50 who've had a variety of cancers, thyroid being one that's very common, and breast cancer. And I'm wondering if the source of that might be something in the drinking water.
Well, that is a great question, and that's what I wanted to mention when I mentioned the PFAS and the chromium hexachloride has been identified, that we definitely are seeing some of these things. And I think you're right about the cancer levels. We have to take it seriously and take seriously any potential cause of that kind of abnormality in the health system. But Suffolk County Water Authority and some of the other water authorities do treat the public well water. So if you're on a private well, I think it's where it's much more of a concern. And that's why I mentioned you can get your water tested. Suffolk County Water Authority will test your water if you're on a private well, and it's not a bad idea. And we've been pushing at the county level to get some of these, the EPA or the state, to identify some of these contaminants as health hazards so that we have the testing that's required, because we just don't have it at this level. I'd love to hear what the scientists think about that.
Sure, I could speak to that. We've actually been working with the Suffolk County Water Authority for decades now on sampling their wells, their supply wells, before they even put any chlorine in it or run it through their advanced filters that are present at some of the sites. And we've found all sorts of the personal care products that we use. They're at really low levels for most of the wells, because a lot of the Water Authority wells are in the deeper Magathie aquifer, but that doesn't mean they're not getting there. And it's a warning sign that these things are getting there, particularly some of the compounds that we've only started using in the past few decades. The fact that they're reaching the deeper wells at this point, where water would typically take decades or over 100 years to reach, just kind of proves that whole drawdown effect of younger water. And there are health standards in place that the EPA and the Department of Environmental Conservation in the state impose, and the Water Authority and all the water purveyors in Nassau County and the smaller water purveyors in Suffolk County adhere to, and they regularly test their water. We're working with them to look at some of the more novel compounds that aren't necessarily regulated, but they're interested in, and we're interested in it from a science perspective and from a natural resource perspective. Because we're not quite sure how these things interact, how well they flow through the aquifer. Some things travel really quickly. Some things get bound up in the soils and don't move as quickly, which will, again, hinder their ability to be treated when being pulled up, because there'll just be a plume or a lag time between when they're deposited and when they're picked up again. And some things can change, as Chris alluded to too, that sometimes sometimes they'll chemically change, and then that daughter product will be worse for you than the original product. They're metabolites that are bad, and can make their way into the local waterways and affect the ecology. And there were studies going on at Stony Brook and all over the country about fish that are changing sex because of the endocrine disrupting compounds that are making their way out of our septic systems. Or
You get what he is saying?
Yeah, it's all doom and gloom. Sorry.
This is a story that's in many of these films that have the compendia of stories about water quality. Hermaphrodite frogs. I mean, this is a very serious issue because it lodges in fatty tissue, and they stay in the body and they don't travel out, just like they don't go out of the water. And so we're all talking really, really fast, but each phrase and each reference is really quite huge, like this hexavalent chromium. Remember Erin Brockovich? So that movie is basically all about hexavalent chromium, but out in the Midwest where there's tremendous amount of different things going into the water. So it's very, very serious. So,
well, I'd like to ask the audience a question following up on that,
Interesting.
Linda. Is that all right? And
yes,
then we
of course. I'm
conclude.
just thrilled. I'm like the seventh
How
heaven.
many people here have private wells? Get your drinking water from private wells? So that's a lot of you. The rest of you get your drinking water from Suffolk County Water Authority, right? So private wells, to follow up on what Bridget said, those are usually shallower and more vulnerable, and so it would be good to get your name on the Suffolk County list to get it tested. And the only problem with that is, Bridget, I believe the wait time is about 6 months, so if you're really anxious to know what's in your own drinking water, you could get a private company to test it. And the reason to do that is that maybe there is a problem with your drinking water that can be fixed with a filter or, drinking more bottled water or whatever. It's not to panic, but it is important to know what is in your drinking water.
We're very fortunate here that we haven't had any major industrial uses of our land, which are a major source of pollution. We are a farming community, and there are some legacy issues in some places with pesticides and herbicides used on farms. Of the areas that we've tested, there is some residual arsenic in some places, and that tends to bind to the soils. And some of the other products have been banned for a number of decades now. Temic, and as you all know, DDT is banned for farm use. And so generally, though, our water quality is extremely good throughout the entire town. I've met with Suffolk County Water Authority and gone through their charts and their well tests, and they've shown good parts of Southampton, and East Hampton is in even better shape than Southampton in terms of the water quality. But we have to be ever vigilant about what we do, and I think everybody can have a positive impact just right how you deal with your lawn care. And I know we had a young lady who was here with their Perfect Earth Project, which is a local organization.
They're right outside in the lobby. You can pick up information about them.
So again, I mean, what you put on the land makes a difference. Do you really need to use fertilizer? And if you do, pick a slow release one. You don't need to use pesticides. There are ways to deal with pests that don't include pesticides. So
it'd be nice if we fell out of love with the big sloping lawn too. I don't know that we all need just acres and acres.
My lawn
of green
personally
lawn.
is in full bloom right now. I have a gorgeous crop of dandelions coming up.
Dandelions look good with violet.
They really do. I have some of those too.
I would like to throw out a different, another concept, which is what Let's Talk About Water tries to do. The idea of using film in relation to a panel like this is to bring art and science and policy together. And we are sitting in Guildhall, which is actually very similar in that it's a gathering place for people to talk over the history of its life. It is a set of art galleries that have some of the most famous artists in the world have been part of this community. And now we have a team of scientists and policymakers that are sort of artists in their own right, because they're opening up their dialogue and their way of doing things to communicate in a broader way. And so it could be that Guildhall becomes a model, just like you said, Rhode Island looks to you for preservation and they look to you for something else. The idea that a museum could be a place to gather to learn about science and to have art that somehow deals with water. Or next year, if we had Let's Talk About Water, that we could have an art show that's all about water, all the images of water, so that there's a flow between the two. Because in a way, another reason I'm here is because the articles written from interviews with many of you make the language so accessible, and the ideas stick in your mind, and the idea that we could each try to do something is so important. So I'd like to wrap up by giving you each 30 seconds to say something important or wishful or to the audience, and then we'll all have some lovely, we've had some wonderful food services throughout the day, and there are some waiting for us out there, and then you can all meet one another. And I'll say it now, I just want to thank you all for coming on this very, very beautiful day, and for each of your contributions, of your questions, and I'm just going to give a few seconds to each of them, and then we'll give them a rousing applause.
Well, I'd like to thank Guildhall and Linda for putting this opportunity before us to communicate with the public and, just have a discussion about what I believe is the most important issue that we all face here, and, preserving our water quality. There's nothing more important than that. Sarah, I think, said that our local economy is based on the environment. I believe that wholeheartedly. And that's a key part of our quality of life. And I'm just thrilled to be here and to be able to, work as your public servant towards ensuring that we have good, clean water.
I would also just like to thank you and Guildhall for including us. I feel like I've done a lot of the talking, so I'd like to cede the balance of my time to Sarah, who's got a lot to say and hasn't said as much as me.
Oh, well, thank you, Bridget. Bridget is one of those rare, really brave and honest politicians. She tells it like it is, so we're very, very fortunate to have her in elected office. I think my take-home message to you all is we're living on our water supply. We're living on our drinking water. It's not in a reservoir upstate. It's not flowing in a river here. We can't go anyplace else for it. You can't see it for the most part. You can't smell it. You can't hear it rushing by. I often wish I could put my ear on the ground and hear the little groundwater particles moving 10 feet, but you can't. So it's hard to really grasp that it's down there, this big, big sponge in our sandy soil. And I just encourage and ask all of you to live responsibly, because what you do up in the house and on the yard, it gets into your drinking water and gets into Georgica Pond and all the other surface water. And if we all cleaned up our act a bit, I think we'd be a lot better off.
Chris.
Well, I guess I'll say that every year I give a lecture that I call The State of the Bays. And the title this year was Hope at the Brink. And so, when I look at our coastal ecosystems, in many ways, I do see them at the brink with the stress of both overloading of nitrogen, and we didn't even talk about climate change.
Yes, I know.
But our coast, the fact of the matter is, actually here on Long Island, eastern Long Island, our coastal waters are warming at a rate 3 times faster than the global average. And so, so when I see that, along with what we're having with nitrogen, yeah, I see someone holding their head there. I have the same feeling. But at the same time, for me, that's the motivation, right? I talk about the serenity prayer, and so give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and to take action on the things that I can, right? And so we're not going to change the global patterns of our climate and the hand we're dealt there, but we can deal with the things at the local level. And the hope is that, because of political change and political will and understanding locally, the tide is turning on that front. And so the table is being set for action to be taken to affect change positively. So I see hope. And I'll leave with hope.
Sean.
All right, thank you. Thank you for inviting us. And I really like what I do. I enjoy serving the public by working for the government, and we'll continue to do as much as we can to work with state, local governments and organizations to monitor and provide data that will hopefully be useful in understanding the water and the surface waters, the groundwaters, how much we have. As much as I talk about all the pollution and everything that's confronting us, it's not a lost cause. And I think that we're fortunate on Long Island and in the country, especially in light of the video, how informed folks are and how willing we all are to make changes to protect the water. And I see it elsewhere in the country, and I know it's going to come to Long Island too, because I live here too, and we all do, and we have to deal with what we do.
Well, thank you so much. Let's give them a rousing applause. Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming, and I applaud you. And now let's get some snacks, and we can all talk amongst each other. Thank you so much for coming.